A girl was pinned to a bed and two strong men took control of her. They tie the girl's limbs with rope and inject an unknown liquid into her body, which quickly puts her into a coma. She is sold to a wealthy man as a commodity to be played with for the rest of her life. When she wakes up again, she finds herself in a cage surrounded by other girls. They are either sold or tricked into coming here, but are eventually shipped around the world in containers as cargo. It's the largest human trafficking ring in the world and has been operating for a long time, forming an entire chain. One day, a new buyer comes to the door and the owner has the goods brought in. The buyer, Jack, is pleased with the girl and is about to take her for money when someone behind him puts a gun to his head. Jack tried to get him to examine the goods on the spot in order to see who he was. The girl was then pushed to the ground and Jack unbuckled his belt and took one step closer. When they weren't looking, Jack pulled out his belt and used it as a weapon to attack. Soon, the boss's men were all beaten by Jack. At the end, the boss was left sitting on the sofa alone, shivering. It turns out that Jack is a police officer pretending to be a buyer to investigate a human trafficking case. He hangs Jack in the air and forces him to reveal the final delivery location. When he got a satisfactory answer, Jack let go and let him fall from the building. In Jack's mind, this is how a human trafficking criminal should die. Because his girlfriend was a victim of human trafficking, she was sold by her mother to traffickers at the age of 12, and the scars on her back make it impossible to imagine what she went through. Growing up, she didn't want other girls to be subjected to this kind of abuse, so she infiltrated the trafficking ring and worked with her police officer boyfriend to break up the crime scene. After learning the exact location of the deal, Jack rushes to inform Interpol that the boss of the traffickers will be trading at the pier tonight. The cops set up a trap at the pier in preparation for his capture. The police onslaught has the criminal gang panicking. In the heat of the battle, the leader, Wayne's son, is shot dead on the spot by police officer Hans. With his beloved son dead in front of him, Wayne had no desire to escape and sat on the ground waiting to be caught. The police open the container on the dock and what's inside shocks everyone. This beautiful group of girls was so tragic. They had been put in a container by traffickers and sold to other countries. They were all suffocated during transport due to lack of oxygen. But perhaps this was a lucky ending compared to the tragedy of being trafficked. The capture of the gang's leader also meant the end of this criminal trade in human skins. But Wayne was able to use his contacts to get himself released on bail without charge. Even if the evidence was overwhelming, the police couldn't do anything about it. With his son lying on a cold operating table, he decides to seek revenge on police officer Hans. Hans had a happy family. One day he noticed a cannon being held up against his window downstairs. Before he knows it, the cannon bursts into the room and several men burst in. It turned out to be Wayne's men seeking revenge for his son. First they killed Hans' wife and then shot him in the back. At that moment his daughter suddenly ran out and Hans was in a trance when he heard a few shots. When he woke up again he was badly wounded but had survived. His boss told Hans that his wife had died on the spot and that his daughter was missing. Knowing this, Hans ripped off his instruments and went to seek revenge on Wayne. He looked at himself in the mirror and his mind was filled with rage. Hans gave his arm a shot of painkillers and ran out of the hospital, avoiding the nurses. He took the car to the burned-down house and found a photo of his family in the ashes and placed it over his heart. He then takes out the case with the gun under the table. Hans's next goal is to avenge his wife's death. At night, Hans follows a lead and breaks into Wayne's restaurant alone. He eventually learns of Wayne's whereabouts and sets fire to the restaurant before leaving. Hans's revenge plan attracts the attention of the police and his sanity is replaced by anger. To prevent him from making another mistake, his superiors contact the local police to arrest him. Jack is the policeman responsible for arresting Hans. Hans leapt off a flyover and grabbed a motorbike from the side of the road, with Jack following from the roof of a house. After a chase, Jack cornered Hans on a dead-end road and he pulled a gun on him to get him to surrender. But Hans stepped on the accelerator and was about to make a run for it when he passed Jack and was pulled down by him. After a scuffle, Jack was thrown by Hans into a passing car and Hans drove off. The girls are like animals in a cage. They cannot resist but are controlled and sold cheaply by traffickers to rich people, who will lose their dignity completely. All they can see on their faces is haggardness and confusion, and no amount of resistance is worthwhile. Hans arrives at Wayne's bar, where he learns of Wayne's location. Seeing the girls in the cage made Hans furious. He thought of what would happen to his own daughter and he wanted to kill Wayne. Hans rushed out with his gun raised. By now Wayne had set up a trap outside. It was hard for Hans to get out on his own. Jack stood behind Hans with his gun, and just as he was about to shoot, Hans' superior pointed his gun at them. He turns out to be an undercover agent sent by Wayne, and the two men try to take care of their superior first. After a struggle, Hans is able to find out where Wayne is, and the superior is shot dead by Jack. Before they leave, they rescue all the girls from the cage, and the girls are finally freed. Jack learns that his girlfriend has also been captured by Wayne, so the two of them go to seek revenge on Wayne. Just as his girlfriend is in danger, Jack appears with a gun. He kills the criminal, while Hans hides and attacks Wayne, who is about to escape. Surprisingly, Wayne is already in the helicopter and Hans shoots the pilot. The out-of-control helicopter crashes to the ground. Seeing Wayne lying on the ground, Hans approached him, not realizing he was just playing dead. Wayne stabbed Hans with a dagger when he wasn't looking. Hans pulled out the dagger with all his strength and stabbed Wayne. He kept asking for his daughter's whereabouts, but Wayne wouldn't give up any information even in death. All he said was that Hans' daughter was now being sold all over the world. At this point, Jack kills his men and continues to fight with the rest. His girlfriend takes the opportunity to hide under the car, and when Jack finishes with the others, he finds her at gunpoint. For the sake of his girlfriend's safety, Jack had no choice but to put down his gun. He then rushes up and fights him when he's not looking, but Jack wins the fight. Hans found his daughter's file. When he found out where his daughter was, Hans set out to find her. Even though it's a long way to go, he's not afraid. The film doesn't go into much detail about the skin trade, but a few brief scenes are heartbreaking. The young girls are subjected to such inhumane abuse at such a young age. Are there people going through this in corners that we don't see? And what can be done to stop it?